Hello and welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, where we share insights about the future of agriculture. Each week, we dive into the stories, technology, and ideas shaping a profitable and sustainable future for farms and rural communities alike. I'm Paul Windemuller, host of the AgCulture Podcast, and today I'm going to be doing a solo episode of my time that I just spent in Chile. Now, I just got off the plane here yesterday afternoon, coming back from Chile, made the journey home and had a great week, spent about 7 days in the country of Chile, mostly in Santiago, but I did get out of the city and venture around the countryside as well. Now, the main reason that I was in Santiago, Chile, was for the International Dairy Federation's World Dairy Summit. And if you were following on my LinkedIn or social media pages, I was asked to speak there on my Nuffield research paper that I just finished and have just released on artificial intelligence and the dairy industry specifically. Now, what is the International Dairy Federation, you might be asking? For those of you not familiar with IDF, it is a global dairy body that brings together science, trade, and policy to discuss together as a global community. Now, the World Dairy Summit is where global leaders in the dairy industry come together to talk about policy and priorities that they're debating in the industry from a global perspective. They present research like I was doing there on my topic for Nuffield, but also from research from different universities around the country, as well as other areas of the supply chain like processing. They not only talk about mature production areas of the world, but also new emerging areas that might be increasing their production and governments that want to increase their homegrown dairy supply. Now, the biggest thing for me that I enjoy, like most conferences, is the networking and potential partnerships and ideas that come out of a week together as a global dairy community. I had many great conversations from technology companies to U.S. trade involvement around the globe. And it's just an exciting place to meet people from the industry and talk about everything from the farm all the way to the end consumer. Now, each year, this conference is hosted in a different country. I've been to it in the Netherlands before. I've been to it in the U.S. This was the first country in South America to hold this conference. And so Chile had the honor of getting that title. And I found it really interesting being in a South American country like Chile that has definitely modernized in certain aspects and in certain aspects it's still developing. Now, just to give you a little background information on the dairy industry in Chile, there's about 6,000 farms that make up the industry, roughly 500,000 to 600,000 cows. To put that into context, the U.S. is roughly at 9.5 million cows right now, so relatively small from a cow number standpoint. And most of that production is located in the southern part of the country. I believe 85% of their total dairy production is located in that more rural area of the southern Chile. Now, I'll get into more specifically what I saw as I visited farms around the country, but I was really only there visiting dairy farms, but did pass through quite a few interesting regions that I wanted to talk about here to give you a little bit of perspective on the general agricultural scene in Chile. Now, for those of you that might not know a lot about Chile, it's the country that runs north and south along the Pacific coast of South America for the vast majority of that coastline. It's a country that's not very wide, mostly due to the Andes Mountain range being the eastern border for the country, and then the Pacific Ocean on the other side. So it's very narrow, but it's extremely long. So that makes up a lot of different geographies as you go from north to south. Now, Chile is a country of roughly 20 million people in population, and almost half of that population lives in the greater metropolitan area of Santiago, which is the capital of Chile, which is also in the more central, north central region of the country. Now, as our tour left the city of Santiago to go visit the dairy farms in the south, we got to pass through some pretty interesting areas. Now, Santiago, the city, is really in a central valley, very similar to the Central Valley of California. It's typically a little bit of a drier region, and you have the coastal mountains, which are They're not very big, but they're definitely mountains on the western side of the city between the coast and the city itself. And then when you look off to the distance east of the city, you see the Great Andes Mountain Range. Now, it's very impressive. There's a little bit of snow still, even though it's kind of mid-spring there, since it's in the southern hemisphere. Still some snow up there, and found it to be a very impressive range. Although I had just come from Banff, Canada, so the Canadian Rockies are also very, very intense. But Andes definitely competed with it as well. Now, because this region is located really between two mountain ranges, as you know, with the Central Valley of California, it's a great place to produce things like fruits and nut crops. So as we ventured south of the city, the first thing that we saw were endless miles and miles of vineyards. And with these vast expanses of vineyards, obviously you're going to have large-scale wineries. And these wineries, the scale of them were just mind-blowing compared to what I've seen, especially the smaller ones that I've been to in the eastern part of the U.S. These vineyards and wineries were just huge. Well, and why is that? Because most of this wine is being exported. Chile is the fourth largest global exporter of wine, and that really shows in this region just south of Santiago, where the majority of the grapes in the country are grown for wine production. They do grow table grapes as well, but obviously wine is a huge business for Chile. Now, the further south we went from the area that had a lot of wine, and then you slowly got into more and more cherries and apples and blueberries, a lot of other fruit production along the way that we got to see. And with that, again, just like wineries with the vineyards, you have the packing houses for the other fruit crops like cherries and apples and blueberries. And again, these were huge operations that had the processing capacity to pack and ship, and again, export the vast majority of what was being produced there. Now, a lot of that goes off to Europe, other parts of South America. Some of it comes up to North America, but a lot of that is going over to Europe and Asia and staying in South America. Now, as we kept driving south, the landscape continued to turn. We were within about 250 kilometers of the city. There's a lot of that fruit production, wine production, and then slowly transformed landscapes once you got beyond 250 kilometers south of the city. Started seeing a lot of forests, which I was not expecting for Chile. And some of the towns that we went through were definitely big lumbering towns, and had vast tracts of forests that were planted specifically for harvesting for the lumber industry. Now, once again, we saw a lot of that processing capacity locally. There are huge mills that we went past that were milling those trees into lumber, into poles, and things like that. Now, continuing further south, you started seeing more and more pasture land. And this pasture land had sheep on it, it had cattle on it, but this is where also the main portion of the dairy region of the country begins. Now, as I said, about 85% of the dairy production in Chile is in this southern, central southern region of the country. And it has some good cropping areas interspersed among the grazing lands, very volcanic soils, a very rich volcanic soil, which was really interesting. It's one thing I always enjoy doing as I go around a new country that I've never been to, or even a new state in the U.S., is just feeling the soil and get out and feel the soil. And that really tells you a lot about that area and its true agricultural potential. The whole trip, I saw a lot of irrigation infrastructure, taking that snow melt from the Andes Mountains and irrigating the vast tracts, whether that be the fruit, which was usually drip irrigated, or the center pivots that were irrigating the pasture lands and the more cropping lands that would become feed for the cattle. A lot of sheep in this area too, which was not what I was expecting, but some of the locals that I talked to said the further south you go, especially in extreme southern Chile, about the only thing you'll find is sheep. So another big livestock class for the country. Now, in this region, outside of the livestock, there were vast tracts of hazelnuts, which, again, I had never really seen hazelnuts until I went to Oregon, as I talked about on my Pacific Northwest Wrap-Up podcast. That is the region, Oregon is the region where you find hazelnuts in the U.S., well, Chile is where you find hazelnuts in South America. The numbers are astounding. Over the last decade, the amount of hazelnut plantings in the country have 10x'd. So it's become a very big business, a lot of processing and infrastructure built around that specific to hazelnuts for the same reasons that I talked about in that Pacific Northwest wrap-up. Now, getting to the dairy farms specifically that I visited. So I visited a few that were more robotic and automated focus, which was a little different for Chile. That's not their main thing. Most of the farms, about roughly half the farms, are very heavily pasture-based dairy systems, kind of like what you'd find in Uruguay or New Zealand or Ireland, with a little different South American twist to it. And the vast majority, I think 85% of the farms in the country utilize some sort of grazing in their system. Now, the couple of farms that I saw with automation, we were there looking at their robotic milking systems, and it really was interesting to me that a country maybe with a kind of a lower standard of living, a lower cost of labor would go toward automation. And I found that quite interesting when we had those conversations with the farmers. They still had the same issues that we face here in the U.S. and in Europe and New Zealand, Australia, trying to find good, reliable help that you can train to be able to milk cows consistently and do it with the level of detail that's needed for the welfare of the cows to be the highest and best. It also allowed them to slowly integrate and expand or update their facilities, which was another aspect that they seemed to like. One of the farms was pretty spread out, and it would have been hard to centralize all of their housing facilities in a way that the milking facility could be consolidated into one spot. Now, one of the farms that I was at, I had a conversation with the owner. They're actually in the process of developing their own specialized language model for their farm, utilizing AI and all of the data that they are collecting. So very advanced for the country and for any dairy farm that I've been to, what they were working on. I thought that was fascinating to go to Chile and see that, something that you'd think you would probably find in the EU or the US. Now, the farms that we also saw automating were also going more toward a conventional or confinement system, similar to what we'd find in the US. More of an open barn concept, because the climate's a lot more advantageous for that than it is here in Michigan, where we've got to be able to close up our barns and have a lot of things insulated to endure the winters. They didn't have that problem down there in southern Chile. They do get cold, they do get winter, but nothing like what we would see in Michigan. But they also fed very similar diets to what I feed in my barn in Michigan, and the cow management was very similar as well. So it's fascinating to me that in a country like Chile, and I've seen this even in Ireland, where they have an advantage to grow high quality grass in a large quantity, there are still farms that seem to do better with a more confined, high rate of non-forage type feeds in the dairy cow's ration. So this was a real quick synopsis of my time in Chile. I can't get into all the conversations that I had. I've got some exciting things coming up that I will be talking about on future episodes, but some of that stuff is tight-lipped right now. Just be looking out for that. We've got some exciting stuff we're working on in mostly the AI and intelligence space in livestock, but also other areas of agriculture as well, being able to tell some stories from great people around the world in agriculture. So I hope you continue to join us to hear some of these stories coming up that we will be highlighting in the near future. And I also just wanted to say before I wrap up here today, I did release my paper, my net field research paper. So if you are interested in finding that, check out our website. You can check out my LinkedIn. I had posted it there as well. You can check out Netfield International's scholarship website. It's also posted on that. And I just want to say thank you very much to the people that supported me on that journey. So many great people that I've met along the way. My family, my wife is absolutely amazing for letting me and supporting me through this last couple of years of just traveling around the world and being able to really dive into something that I'm very passionate about in agriculture. Also, the sponsors that I had for my Netfield scholarship, very grateful to them and the ability that they gave me to travel. And if you're interested in becoming a Netfield sponsor, reach out to me. I can get you connected. I think it's a valuable thing for both the scholars and the sponsors. Sponsors do get a lot out of it as well. So just connect with me if you're interested with that. I can get you in touch with the right people to have that discussion. And with that, until next week, I'm Paul Windemaller. Thank you so much for listening to the AgCulture Podcast.